Otherworldlyculture.com presents a panel discussion with horror icon Andrew Divoff, moderated by Michael Exler, and recorded at Horror Realm 2026 in Pittsburgh.
All right, there we go. Andrew Divoff, put your hands together.
Hey guys. Thanks very much. You guys just had the pleasure of meeting one of the nicest, best guys. He looks like a big old mean guy, doesn't he? But he's a sweetheart. He's a sweetheart. There you go. Oh, thank you. Yep, appreciate that. If you'll indulge me here for a second, I'm gonna start by doing my chocolate routine. I don't know if some of you may know what that's about. Do you? Well, when I was doing the voice, I started out just eating regular food, and I realized after the first day when the makeup guys started picking food out from between the mask and my face, I said, "Yeah, this ain't gonna work." So after that, I did milkshakes, and that actually strengthened the voice, made it more gurgly. And so I'm going to do a quote for you at the end of the show, and I got to prepare with some chocolate to keep the voice gurgly. Anybody want some chocolate? You know, I don't eat chocolate, I don't eat sugar, no. But dang, that's good.
So let's start off sort of at the beginning. What made you want to become an actor?
You know, I was a real shy kid. I was born in Venezuela. Mom's Irish, Dad's Russian. Like to say I don't cuss, I don't tell jokes, don't read poetry, but that'd be a lie. So I came up to the States when I was about 10, and Spanish being my first language, I had a 10-minute conversation with the principal of the school I was going to go to, and apparently I had an accent, and that kind of really stigmatized me. Nobody had ever said that to me. So he turns to my mom and he says, "I don't know, he seems kind of dumb. We're going to have to keep him back. We're going to put him back in 4th grade." And I got stigmatized about that, and I got real shy. But I always knew I had a show off inside, and so I thought, well, my favorite actors, mind you, in Venezuela, I grew up watching Combat. I watched Humphrey Bogart, the Dead End Kids, and so I kind of learned English from those guys. And so you'll often hear me if you're by my table, like I'll refer to people. Well, thank you, kid, and that was Humphrey taught me that. So as I say, I kind of became a little bit of a recluse kid, but I obsessed on languages. I speak 8 now, and I think that, forgive my French, asswipe principal is selling popcorn somewhere. I don't know what he's doing. So forgive me to finish that up, Mike. I just kind of knew that I was a show off inside. And the only way for a kid to sort of bridge that gap and put it out there was to say, well, I want to be an actor. So I didn't want my friends to think that I was showing off or anything. And I gave them a reason, the reason being I wanted to be an actor, and that's why I do these strange voices and these accents and all of that. And so it wasn't until later I actually started as a stuntman and then worked into the acting. And I guess one of the compliments I'd heard was, "Oh, so you're an actor who does stunts, not a stuntman who can do some acting." And I thought, well, that's an interesting way to put it. But so finally, I got to show off, and I felt good about it. Yeah.
And I was going to ask you about your accents in a lot of the movies. Do you find that you took what was a negative in your childhood and made that a positive in your adulthood?
That's a good question. Thank you, Mike. Yeah, I think so. And as I say, even joking, the class cut up, the class clown, I would do accents, and it would really piss the teachers off, but the kids loved it. So I figured, okay, I'm doing something right.
Do you have a particular favorite accent when you're acting?
You know, I tend to do a lot of the Russian. And so I like that accent. I don't know how many of you might remember the actor Omar Sharif. I imitated sort of his accent in a movie called Blast. Not quite British, not maybe more what they call a continental accent. And I do like doing that because when I do it, people don't know where the hell is this guy from, you know. So I like doing stuff that kind of trips people up in an accent that you might not expect with a character.
When you're deciding if you want to do a role, what goes into that for you?
A lot of people, the comment is, and even casting people, they'll say, you know, you always play the bad guy, but you know, there's so much more, and there has to be depth. And yeah, I do like the antagonist, and I mean that even the antagonist, there's a spectrum. You can go from, you know, just, you know, every now and then you do a bad thing to a totally evil mofo. But I do love the antagonist. I get a kick out of playing them. I just, you know, I played two quote unquote good guys in a couple of movies. Never been so bored in my life, I gotta tell you. A good guy's gotta go by the rules, you know, you pet the kitty cat and, you know, but God forbid a good guy should scold a puppy, you know, he's lost his audience. But if a bad guy pets a puppy, you think, oh hell, he just killed 12 people. Look, he's petting that puppy. He's got to be a good guy.
So you said you played a good guy a couple times. In 1992, I just watched this film this week. It was called The Interceptor.
Yes.
And you were the good guy. And
thanks for watching that. Thank you.
Yeah, it was
actually that was not too boring. It was cool.
Well, you also were, your main bad guy was Jurgen, and I'm not going to butcher his last name.
Jürgen Prochnow, yeah.
There we go.
Yeah. Wonderful man, wonderful actor. He was.
I felt you guys sort of had similar styles. Did you feel that at all?
Indeed. And we, you know, Jürgen's a wonderful guy, and you know, agents will do what they have to do. And so before that movie started, Jürgen and I fought for first billing through our agents, and Jürgen, as a gentleman, he is a gentleman. He acquiesced and he said, you know what, he's the lead. And so, however, at that time, Jürgen and I had so much more, you know, just cachet, let's put it that way, than I did. He had done so many more films, and he had worked with Wolfgang Petersen on a movie called Das Boot, and gained worldwide acclaim for that. And so, if you guys ever see the movie, thanks for bringing it up. It's called Interceptor. Now, Jürgen is one of Wolfgang Petersen's best friends. Wolfgang Petersen directed Air Force One. I have a feeling, and Jürgen played a part in that. I have a feeling that Jürgen showed him that movie, and Wolfgang said, you know what, we can make this better. And that turned into Air Force One. I was lucky enough to work on that not with Jürgen in the same movie, but my first encounter with Harrison Ford, and I got to tell you, I'm not often intimidated by actors, and it wasn't anything. Harrison Ford is a beautiful human, but just being on a set, on a stage with that man I was like freaking like, oh my, and he was such a gentleman, and his whole thing was he was a little concerned about whether I'd be able to do the stunt. One of the most heartbreaking things you could see as an actor is to watch another trade, and this other trade being the stuntman. And he was having trouble doing what they call a bulldog. Basically, he was gonna throw a right cross, and Harrison was gonna duck and throw him over, and the guy just couldn't do it. And so he tried it 3 times, and then they pulled him aside, and he kind of disappeared. And I knew what that was about, and I felt real bad. But I'm happy to tell you, I got it in one take, and Harrison was like, "Wow, okay." And so usually the A actor will leave the set when his stuff is off, when he's off camera. But Harrison was kind enough to say so. Sometimes the camera will establish wide; it'll come in medium, and then close over the shoulder. And you'll see the other actor. So you'll see a punch come through from the guy he's fighting, but you'll mostly see the face of the other actor. And I figured when Harrison's stuff was done, he'd probably walk off stage, and his double would come in. But he stayed there and he became a cheerleader, and he said, "That's it, Andy. Throw another punch. Here you go now." He was absolutely wonderful, and so after that, he was my chauffeur on the Paramount lot. They gave him a golf cart, and he said, "You need to go. You're going to the where you go? I'll give you a ride." So he gave me a ride. Now, mind you, at the same time, Jack Nicholson and Mike Douglas were on that lot. And they would all show up early. An actor hardly ever shows, the A-listers hardly ever show up early. They showed up early to get the fastest damn golf cart because they'd all race. They'd race to get to wherever first. "I beat you today, you ass, but I got you." That was a funny thing to see. It was a different time, it was 97, yeah. Which, by the way, Air Force One and happy to say Wishmaster. So Air Force One in that week's box office was #1, and Wishmaster was #7. So that was kind of a cool week for me, I gotta tell you.
So before we get into Wishmaster a little bit, you were in Neon Maniacs. You played Doc.
Yes.
What was the makeup like, the process for that?
The makeup, a gentleman came by and he took a screen cap, and I hadn't revisited that makeup in my mind for a while, and I saw that picture and I thought, wow. It was a lot more elaborate than what I thought, but it was so simple. They started out with basically what seemed to me to be Elmer's glue. It was a white glue, so they put that on there, let it get a little tacky. Then they started approaching me with toilet paper, and I'm kind of looking, and they'd stick the toilet paper on there, and then they kind of scratched it off so it looked like peeling skin, and then they did the makeup on top of that and put the blood, and they built it up almost like paper mache for that cut that comes across the forehead. And I was amazed. It really was amazing. And I think to save time, because there were all the zombies, and I guess makeup took quite a while. I think it took a few hours to get everybody through. And so I think I was one of the last guys the first day. And then they just said, "You know what? Throw a mask on them." So because they didn't want to do the whole face, so they put a mask on the bottom part, and so all they had to do was what was above the mask. Kind of saved them a little time.
Right. That was one of your first films. When you're a young actor, are you really nervous and you really want to do this well, or is it something you're very confident with?
Well, you know what? The best way to ease into that is for them to tell you, "Well, you're a zombie and you're not going to have any lines." And I said, "I can do that." I got that down. But of course nervous, and being on screen. And the cool thing was that for a new actor, for instance, once you learn a little more, not to cross the lens, you keep your eye line over there. You're talking to a character. Make sure you don't, you're talking over there. Don't cross that lens, and all of a sudden, because then that confuses people. And for the follow-up cuts, it'll confuse that. So. It was a great learning experience for me. Yeah.
Very cool. So it's said to be your breakout role as Cherry Gans in Another 48 Hours. I read an interesting story. You found out how you got the role of the film. What was that story?
So I was a buddy of mine, William Forsythe. You guys know his work. He calls me. I think it was a Friday, and he says, "Hey man, I got a ticket for you. We're heading." This would have been November 15th of 1989, and he says to me, "I got a ticket. Somebody just dropped out. I'm going to Berlin. We got to be there. This was the wall coming down." And I said, "Oh, William, man, I got an audition tonight at 6. I can't make it." He goes, "Dude, it's a red eye." And I go, "Oh." So the plane was going to leave at like midnight. So I could do my audition. So I did my audition, and William was kind enough to, he said, "Show up with your passport." He sent a limo to Paramount, and I took a ride to the airport, and about 15 hours later, after a few beers and having the flu or the cold, something bad, I was on the wall, literally on the wall, and I was apparently so between these slabs, there's about a 1/4 inch where the grout had sort of melted away over the years, and he was looking through, and apparently I'd had a few beers, and Next thing I know, I'm being hoisted. Nobody else is being hoisted, but I'm being hoisted to the top of the wall and said, okay, well, I'll go with this. And on the top of the wall, there were like these Spanish tile, asbestos caps that lined that whole wall. And somebody handed me a hammer, and I was whacking on it, pulling off pieces, handing it down. And when I got back down, William said, I was looking through the thing, and did you see that guy shoot in the air? And I go, what guy? And he said that a sergeant had come out as his, I guess, young kid, private, whatever their version of a private is. Got nervous because he saw my head pop up, and he figured, he knew he could hear the people on the other side, and he figured that, well, we're about to get raided here. And so he shot in the air. His sergeant came out, pulled him away. They disappeared into the crowd. They literally, disappeared. And I never knew about it. William told me when I got back down, I go, you got to be kidding me, man. But that was quite a beautiful thing. And the only more beautiful thing earlier that day was meeting Walter Hill, because he was in that reading. And Jackie Birch was the casting lady. She doesn't like me, and didn't like me after that, because I didn't have an agent that anybody knew, so they wouldn't see me. And I sent a picture that I had, Walter had been interested in me as an extra for something called Warriors. It was Streets of Fire Warriors, forgive me. And so I knew I was going to be on Paramount. I was on there for Hunt for Red October, and I knew that I'd heard that there was a biker movie being done, and at that point it was a working title, and it was going to be called eventually Another 48 Hours, but it was called The Biker Movie. And so I went and found Walter's office on the lot, and I pinned that picture to it, and then he followed up, and I finally got in for the audition. I had to sort of break my way in, but that was the time. And I asked him if I could do a sort of an improv, and he said, please. And at the time I did the improv, it was Cherry Gans, it was Hickok, and then Ted Marklin's role, Malcolm. And so I did an improv where I went off on Hickok, because there were two brothers, both Hickoks, and I said, man, your brother's, forget my French, he's fucking shit up, man. You got to get him in line, dude. And so I did that for Walter, and Walter said, you know what? Go down. John Fasano was the writer. He said, go down and do that for John, will you? And I said, oh, okay. And so they wrote that other guy out, and I guess that saved the production a little bit for the motorcycle and the other actor, whatever. The nicest thing about it was they said to me, they took me down to Bartell's Harley, and they said, we're going to train you, give you a ride, and so forth. After about 3 or 4 training lessons, they said, go ahead and keep the bike till we start the movie, and that was 6 months away. So that was my ride for about 6 months. Yeah.
Very cool. Do you think that role led to people seeing what you can bring to a character in Hollywood, like producers and whatnot?
The Cherry Gans role? I think so. I think the fact that I was unknown, I think people kind of, did a head jerk and say, who's this kid? And so, yeah, I think really what really opened that up was Toy Soldiers. And the beautiful thing about that is the commentary that I still get is that people didn't that was you. So that's kind of the best compliment that an actor can get. I think when I saw Wesley Snipes at the premiere of Another 48, and he came up and he gave me a hug. He says, "You're bad, dude. You're bad." And I thought, wow, very cool. Wesley was very kind, and I think, as I say though, I think until Toy Soldiers came out, commentary I got for that, by the way, was, yeah, he's a good actor, but damn, that accent, he's not going to be able to do a whole lot. And I thought, well, that's a great compliment, man. And so, yeah, another feather in the cap.
You've obviously worked with a ton of famous people. Eddie Murphy and Nick Nolte.
Yes.
What were they like on
They
set?
were beautiful. They were beautiful. I remember there was when we're at that sort of cafe, that bar out in the desert. We were at Dumont Dunes, Baker, just outside of Vegas. And I remember that now I don't know if you might have ridden Harleys before. I don't know if you've ever ridden them in the sand. That was a squirrely mofo, and I had to come around the corner and keep coming, and the tail kept squirreling out, and I thought, ooh. But I figured, well, if we go down in sand, that's not going to be too bad. But it made it all the way in. I remember Walter said, I approached him and I said, after we shot Miss Tallman, it was her first stunt. And for your first stunt as a stunt person to be going out a window on a ratchet, that's like one of the most dangerous stunts you can do, because a lot of people have had their necks broken doing that. And so one of the things they did is this was a window that lifted up, and so one of the things, they scored the wood, and it was sugar glass, so it wouldn't have cut her, but the wood would have broken her neck had she hit it. So they scored it just in case she might hit it so that it'd break easily. So she pops out the window. She's gone, and I shoot her. And then Walter says, I want you to hear, even though there wasn't a sound, I want you to hear that radio in the cop car, and I want you to approach it and kill it. And I said, okay. And in the meantime, Hickok had shot the cop that was driving the car, and he was on the ground. And I said, well, I'm gonna step over him. I said, Walter, would it be all right if, as I'm stepping over, I just kind of give him a shot, shoot him in the back? And he said, sure, do it. And so I'm walking over, and as I step over, without looking at him, I shoot him in the back. And Walter says, don't tell him. So he was wearing the vest, and so he was covered. He was a stunt man, and I said, don't tell him. He said, no. And so the kind of interesting thing that happened when he heard the gunshot, the stunt man, his leg kicked, and so that was kind of, Walter loved it because it made it as if he were still alive, and that was the kill shot. And so I remember flying on a plane, a little jet that got us to, I think it was Modesto, outside of Folsom, and Mr. Nolte was sitting over here on the left. I was kind of looking out the window, and he leans forward and he goes, hey, that shit you did out in the desert, that was some kick-ass shit. and that's all he said. And I was sitting there going, wow, that was Nick Nolte. And so it was one. Eddie Murphy was great. Now he'd had some trouble with coming to America. Art Buchwald had written a book. He was a local newsman in the paper, would do the editorials, and was suing Eddie. And so Paramount, one day they're friends, and then the next day they're not. So Paramount put out the word that they were very disappointed that Eddie's movie had only made $89 million, that didn't break the $100 million barrier on the weekend. And I thought, well, poor you guys, oh my. And so they kind of put him through hell, and Eddie kept his chin up and didn't say a dang thing, and showed up at the party where nobody showed up. So that was kind of a message from Paramount. Balloons everywhere. The room was ready for 200 people. There may have been 10 there. So it was a message. But Eddie kept his chin up, and he you could tell that he knew it was coming. But it was I'll never forget that. It was a beautiful memory, and two names that you brought up, and I figured, well, they're probably not going to be very friendly, but they couldn't have been more gentlemanly, friendly, and great to work with.
It's always good to hear.
Yeah.
So let's move on to the Wishmaster.
Yes.
So how did you end up becoming the Djinn?
I think, I think Robert was a fan, and he's told me, he said, Toy Soldiers is one of my favorite movies ever. So I think that he had seen that and he wanted to meet me, and a buddy of his had called him apparently, who was a fellow writer and who had seen what I'd done on Graveyard Shift, and said, I think this is your guy. And now how the hell you take dancing from Graveyard Shift and say, yeah, that's the Wishmaster? I don't know how they figured that out, but I got to meet Robert. I went in, and he told me, I want you, I'm pushing for you. The studio didn't, and that's understandable. Again, I wasn't very well known, and so Robert kept in contact, and he kept bringing up the thing. What are we going to do for the voice? What do we do for the voice? And I realized that this ancient being, I mean, he, almost as if he came up from the desert as I don't know, as maybe an ethereal gas would, and I figured it had to, the voice had to just have this ring of ancient sort of just having been around forever and coming up out of the bowels of the earth. And so finding the voice was the hardest, but the fact that I was cast in this and I was going to have, I was very nervous about doing the role, but the fact that I was going to have 52 pounds of makeup on my face, I figured, okay, well, I got a cool mask to hide behind. That's going to help a lot. And it was kind of serendipitous, and I found out, as I mentioned to you, the milkshakes kept my throat really sort of covered, kind of the difference between a tailpipe with holes in it and one that's brand new. And so I just kept drinking my protein shakes all day. And eventually, when Bob heard the voice for the first time, he came running up. He goes, "Where did that come from? That's it." And so I'm going to share the first scene that at the end of our talk here. The first scene that I ever did with that voice, we'll do at the end of the show, and you can tell the chocolate's doing its thing.
And did you do any research into the folklore of the Djinn?
I did. Yes, and sort of as the Persians. So in Zoroastrianism, the evil genie was a trickster, and so it was the lesson that you can be greedy, you can hope for greed, you can hope to be rich, you can hope for all those things, but there's a price, and the genie's job is to make you understand that there's a price for all of that. You're going to pay for it. Yeah, he'll give you the richness, but of course, modern day Robert Kurtzman, Peter Atkins, they really twisted that evilness and the joy that the genie gets out of, providing the wish, but then making you pay for it.
You brought up Robert. What kind of director was he like?
He was wonderful. And so the cool thing about Robert is that he could separate his artistic lane, because he's an amazing artist, a sculptor, and did all of the sort of the drawings that were the perspective look of the Djinn, and so. But he could separate himself from being director to the artist. So when he's directing, he's not looking at his art. He's looking at the overall picture. And he was quite wonderful, very, very succinct. He would say what he wanted, and then everybody understood, especially his immediate crew, the guy making sure that all the artwork, that the makeup, that everything looked good, and they understood as sort of as brief as his instructions could be. They knew exactly what he wanted and what was expected of him.
How long did the makeup take?
First time 4 hours, and then we got that down to about 3:15 for the full, and then about 2.5 hours for half. And there's a shot called The Cowboy, which was from the old westerns, where the film, the screen, the frame would only go down to the guns, and so that's why they called it a cowboy. It would be from head to guns. And so if it was a cowboy, then we wouldn't do the full makeup, so that would take 2.5.
Did you despise it as much as other actors did?
I didn't, because I knew the end product. I despised being in it for sometimes 14 hours, 16 hours. The worst part of it were the eyes, and thank goodness that there was an eye tech there for the contacts. And every half an hour, putting drops in there, and here she comes again. But you know what? Thank goodness for that, because I learned my lesson. I had since that time, I was very brief. I've co-written the thing, and I filmed a trailer of it, and I didn't have a tech. I couldn't afford a tech. I paid for the trailer and so forth. So I figured, well, what the hell? I'll do the drops myself. But I was up on a rock. And my drops were, of course, down there. So I said, let's just get the shot. Well, at the end of the night, this contact came out no problem. This one glued its ass to my eyeball. And so I literally scratched the hell out of my cornea because I got so exasperated, he just ripped it out of there. And the doc told me, yeah, I've maybe seen one corneal scratch that was worse than that. I thought, oh, okay. But the good thing is the eyes heal fairly well and quickly. But yeah. I hope I answered your question here, brother.
So K&B did the effects for the film. Were you aware of those guys before the film?
I wasn't.
What they could bring?
No, and of course we're all aware of them since then. But all of them, Greg Nicotero, the N in K&B, is here with us. Kurt Smith, of course, is the K, and B for Howard Berger. Beautiful guys and artists, each and every one of them in their own right, as we know now. We've seen what Gregory's done, and props to him. Beautiful guy and unassuming guy. And a lot of people will say to me, well, he's kind of the George Romero of time. I said, no, he's the Greg Nicotero of our time. And George, Mr. Romero, whom I met, was a beautiful guy, was a fan of Greg. So, though I wasn't aware of them before, I of course, we're all aware of them now. But working with them was what a treat. And oftentimes we don't realize as actors how lucky we are to be where we are at the time that we're there. So looking back, thank you for helping me look back, Mike.
Oh, no problem. So were you on set when a lot of the special effects were happening? I know you were there in the film, but I know a lot of that isn't the case, like you said with Harrison Ford, the star leaves. Were you on set?
Absolutely. I was there to see in the party at the end, the party scene. There's a moment where one of the guests bursts into flame, and the guy the stuntman who was doing that had been around, and I could see him getting a little nervous. A fire gag is a heavy thing. If any of you have spoken with Kane, heard or read his book about fire, fire's really a scary thing to do. I never did a fire gig. And I wouldn't want to. I mean, if they said, "Okay, you're doing the fire gig," I'd say, "Oh boy." But you need to practice because you can't breathe while you're on fire. If you do, you're sucking in fire and smoke, and that's not a good day. I remember this gentleman. So he was going to go out a window. He was going to burst through a window to get the heck out of the party and maybe find some water to roll around in or something. And I remember, though, so that should have been tempered glass, and they would have had a D80 shot on it that would have shattered it. Well, the D80 went off, and I'm watching this guy, and he runs to the glass, and he bounces off. And now he's still on fire. And so he's looking around, and he backed up, because he did that, which means let's keep it rolling. And so he ran again, meanwhile not breathing, and bounced off again. And then he went to the ground, and he just said went to the ground, and they put him out. It wasn't tempered glass. And so somebody messed up big time, and could have killed this guy. So it was things like that. And later on, I remember there was another fire gag where you see, I think he catches the curtains on fire. They shot that another day after he goes out, and that little bit of fire burned that whole set down. I was, and so I knew it was going to be an off day for me. So I sent a coffee truck, an espresso truck for the crew. Come to find out, I get a call from the coffee truck saying, "Yeah, no, we didn't." And I said, "What?" So what happened? He said, "Well, the building burned down." And I said, "Oh, okay." So that was kind of weird. And honest to God, I had nothing to do with that.
So was Wes involved in the film at all?
He came down to the set one time, and I think that he one time that I was there. He had come down other times to meet with Robert and talk to Robert, and so I remember shaking his hand. I still have a photograph with him and Robert and a few of the other guys, and he was a very quiet man, very almost I would have to assume timid. Because he didn't say a lot, but when I shook his hand, he kind of looked me in the eyes, and he kind of cocked his head a little bit, and I think he was in his own mind, the gears were turning. He was thinking, okay, but he was seeing the human thing, so he's trying to. I think he was trying to superimpose the monster look on me, and but as I say, he was very quiet. But it was cool meeting him.
I've got to interview Kane and the late Tony Todd many times.
Beautiful. Rest in peace, brother.
Yes, and they always had the best things to say about you, and I always would ask them, why did you sign up to be in Wishmaster? And they all said, to help you go forward. What does that mean to you for those guys?
I always refer to them as my big monster brothers, and I was the new monster on the block. And it's interesting, we took a photograph, I don't know if you've seen it, Mike, but there's a photograph of all of us in there, and Tony and everybody, and you can tell these guys are established and they're very confident in themselves. And I'm in sort of the back of the group with a bit of shadow on me, and so that tells you everything you need to know. I was still not necessarily intimidated, but shy. I certainly wasn't going to push myself to the front and get in front of these guys. And the photographer made the mistake of asking, if Kane, if your guy fought Robert's guy, and Tony speaks up and he said, no, we're not going to do that. so everybody had pride in their own monster, and I caught that right off the bat. And they were all really, really beautiful to me. They came halfway through the film and said, you're going to be doing conventions. And I said, what are conventions? And they said, you're going to be going all over the world, and you're going to get to meet people, and they're going to come and tell you how wonderful you are. And I said, oh, come on, man. And so that came true. That came true. And I didn't even have to make a wish.
So moving on to the second Wishmaster, when you were in your human form, I read you didn't blink at all.
Right.
Were you guys wanting to do that? Or was that
So yeah, and I realized, it may have been Robert who came up and said to me, dude, you know that you haven't blinked all day on camera? And he said, I love that. Now, as Nathaniel Demarest, I was wearing blue contacts, and it was actually a function of the eyes getting a little bit dry. And so even if I had wanted to blink, I think it just kind of, there was that friction that kept me from blinking, and so it was really a happy coincidence. Worked out very well. But to have that sort of that look like that and be able to never blink, I looked at it and it's creepy as fuck.
It is. Anthony Hopkins actually did that for Hannibal Lecter in Silence of the Lambs.
I just saw that again. And by the way, guys, I'm gonna visit Buffalo Bill's house while I'm here. I'm gonna head up the road and may do that tonight, but I can't wait. But Anthony Hopkins, I met him. My first wife, we're since divorced. She was Russian. She was an actress and ballerina, and she came over here, and she played the translator in Nixon. And so I went to the premiere and the party, and I was what a beautiful guy Anthony Hopkins was. I said some stupid thing because I was nervous to meet him, and he laughed. I don't think he thought it was funny. He was just being a gentleman, and I'll never forget meeting him. He was really cool. I didn't know that about him, that the blinking, but
yeah, he just did an interview with Colbert at the beginning of the year, last year, and he said that was one thing that he wanted to do. He wanted to be very robotic.
How brilliant!
And a robot.
How brilliant is that? And so he was. When you think of him, when she first meets him, and he's standing there, he almost like a mannequin.
Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. Good to know that, Mike. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So one last question from me before we go to the audience. If the Wishmaster ever came calling, would you pick up the phone?
What? No. Of course I would. You mean for
the Djinn to play him again?
Absolutely. And we a buddy and I, the same buddy who I wrote Blood Right with. And very briefly, that's a clash of mythologies. I am a monster, sort of related to a wolf, but not a wolf man, not a werewolf. And the wolfman part of this has more to do with Norse mythology and Fenrir, and so that mythology meets Bastet, the cat cult from Egypt, and so they clash, and it's a kind of an interesting thing. But forgive me. Get me back on track here, brother.
Just if they would want to bring Wishmaster back.
And so we wrote Wishmaster 3 and presented it to, at that time, Artisan. And I guess you know when you walk in a room and the first comment that the guy they designated to speak to you, when his comment is, "So this is what you want to go with?" Well, dude, I mean, you've read the script, you know that I co-wrote it, of course it's what we want to go with. They weren't cool with it. We decided to part ways, to agree to disagree. What they hadn't told me, after they cut the budget of the first one, $7 million for the first budget, and now all of a sudden they had about $700,000 to do what they were saying was going to be number 3. Well, the truth of it was that they filmed 3 and 4 with that budget, and they would take the actor and move him from one set on number 3 to the set on number 4. So it was unfortunate, and I would think that they would have wanted to keep the lore and keep the sort of magical world going, but you know, I looked at even the lighting, and it seemed like to be soap opera lighting. And so I knew I had made the right decision. But hopefully there's some love for it. I know that the fans have been very kind and kept the idea up and the hope of it continuing. So I'd love to do it.
All right, who has a question? Anybody in the audience?
And no, you can't have my bank account number. So that's...
All right, if there's not any questions, I'm going to do something. I'm going to turn the lights down, and then I'll let you take over.
Thank you, Brother Mike. And thanks for having no questions, hey? No gotcha question. So in that scene where... No. We're turning the lights down. Thank you, Mike. That'll work. I'm going to ask you all a favor. I'm going to do a line for you. You know, I'm going to talk, and I'm going to ask you to all close your eyes and travel with me for a second. And while your eyes are closed, if you would take your wallets and put them on your right hand. But let me leave you with this treat. Please close your eyes and travel for a second with me. Run, insect. Run and tell those you will what you will. Tell them there is something new in their city. Something which feeds on wishes. But tell them quickly while you still have a soul. Thank you, guys.
Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for Andrew Divoff.
So the wallets. Thanks for being here, guys, and for sharing this moment. I appreciate that. You guys have a beautiful day.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it, brother. Beautiful. Go right back out there. Thank you.
Subscribe, like, and comment on our posts all over social media and our site, otherworldlyculture.com.